to you a little bit, like what are some of the key strategies for creating a believable and immersive world in your stories?
Ooh, something that's relatable, something that, well, first you got to be descriptive in a way that helps people see it. Imagine it, because for me, when I read, it's not like I'm reading; it's actually that I'm watching something in my head. And you gotta. So the novels that I've been thinking about have been something that I kind of fell into, but I've also been a deep thinker, fantasy thinker. So while I'm developing the first part of the story, I'm also during times when I'm down or not writing, I'm thinking about how to expand the world, right? To build it. So it doesn't just come all at once, but what I'm learning is that for me, as I'm writing, ideas tend to flow more than when I'm not writing, if that makes sense. Not when I'm in the process of typing out things, I'll have things pop into my head that are beneficial to the story and that add depth, right? So part of what I'm trying to do and the process is that I'm always thinking about double meanings and how it can relate to one thing but also allude to another. That's the psychology of me writing. But building a world, I started off very generic. So I don't like the only place that I mention in like a physical location inside the first novel is Argentina,
Wow.
because I know that, by creating a world where you can be anywhere, right? Like people from Chicago or Denver or LA can see themselves being that character. And I think that's the most important thing
Yeah.
is that the you can root for the character, but you can also identify with the character on my series because it's heavily centered around my mental health journey as well.
Oh, very nice. And that's what I was asking too when it comes to that world building, right? Because I think so often we think of those Marvel worlds or Luke Skywalker and the big worlds they do. But I think when it comes to world building, it helps also to just tell those like real human stories, no matter what place we're in, right? So like, how do you kind of do? How do you balance that, like that, bringing real human ethics stories to these, these, giant different maps and worlds that we build?
Well, I think I take a lot of well, my main character is essentially me, right? Going through this process of healing and dealing with the internal emotions that I've been dealing with, right? So I think relating having a character that you can relate to that you can become throughout the entire story. So, one of the things that I like is that a lot of people have told me is that they become my main character. They don't just watch her go through it. They actually see themselves in her. Right? So I think being relatable is how you help identify with the character and create a relatable character within this massive story, right? So, for example, you can have pocket dimensions like I do. You can have, another planet, but it creating that tie to that place, to the character, and then the character's emotions, and you tie it to the reader.
Yeah, last thing on world building, how do you ensure like the rules of the world are consistent throughout the narrative? Like you said, when you're going to pocket dimensions and everything as well.
So that's interesting because you have to there's a line you have to toe between reality, because I heard this thing, it said reality doesn't make sense but fantasy does, meaning that like in fantasy you can make up your own rules, but you have to clearly define those rules and then also catalog or document those rules um for that specific place or the universe. So I've got a list of powers that Kayla will uncover as she goes, and I have a list of the whole like 26 powers that she's gonna uncover eventually by the end of the novel series, and sticking to that, right? And then so for me, like each time she takes a step forward, right, regardless of how many steps back in her journey, she unlocks that power, right? So I have to put what unlocks that power next to that power, right? So for example, if she, like, in order to use magic, I'll give you like a little snippet behind the first, or like something that nobody really knows. In order to use magic, she has to find her sense of wonder for the world again. And once she does that, then and only then can she start using that magic and stuff. So it really just depends on how you define the rules and how well you catalog and document what those rules are.